Hey guys, you're watching Lit Sports Online. It's the UFC 232 recap where we're going to go over the fight results. Got your favorite mixed martial arts / fighting host here, Pat. And then you have your second favorite by default, me, Justin. So, let's get into the action. We've got BJ Penn and Ryan Hall. That was an interesting one with Ryan Hall winning by submission. Anything to add?
Yeah, it was real interesting because it was one of the things that I said in the pre-fight video that I wanted to see was if this could turn into a really interesting grappling match, considering BJ Penn's one of the best American jiu-jitsu practitioners of all time, and Ryan Hall is another up-and-comer from that BJJ circuit. And Ryan Hall was able to knee bar him in the first round. BJ actually looked pretty good. He went back to kind of his old fighting stance instead of this weird upright thing that he had going, and Ryan Hall just did one of his signature moves. He dove in for the leg and got the knee bar, and BJ tapped immediately. So I think it was a good win for Ryan Hall. It's a good notch on the belt. BJ Penn is a legend. To have his name on your resume is always a good thing, but it was like the worst thing I wanted to see for BJ Penn. I mean, he's like I said, he's a legend of the sport. He's a pioneer. He's one of only 5 people at this point to hold titles in 2 divisions. And to see one of the most respected jiu-jitsu practitioners in American history be submitted in a UFC fight was just kind of a new, like, kind of low for the fan of BJ Penn. You know what I mean? You don't want to see that from somebody who's as respected as he is in that realm. And I think he just needs to hang it up. It's been a long time coming. Hasn't looked great in most of his fights recently, but I think it's time. Great win for Ryan Hall. Excited to see where he goes from here, but it was sad to see BJ lose in that manner.
Moving on, we got Kat Zingano and Megan Anderson in a fight where Megan Anderson won with a knockout and ended in round 1 too. So
yeah, kind of controversial. It was a knockout in one sense, and it wasn't in another. What happened was Megan Anderson threw a high kick, and her big toe caught Kat Zingano right on the eye, and it. Basically, Kat Zingano immediately was just kind of bugged out. Was like, oh my God, and turned her back to Megan Anderson. But since there was no eye poke or anything that the ref would normally stop the fight for, she turned her back and she wasn't defending herself, so it was ruled a TKO. Really what happened is her big toe went into her eyeball and cut her eyelid and cut the surface of her eyeball as well. So she's bleeding in and out of her eye. And it was pretty brutal, but it's an interesting stoppage, and it brings up a point that I've never heard before, which is, can you get an eye poke from a foot? If that happened and, like, say your thumb went into somebody's eye and your thumbnail scratched their eyelid and their eyeball, it would be an eye poke. But since it was their toenail, it's not an eye poke, it's a head kick and it's a TKO. So it's a weird finish. Megan Anderson offered Kat Zingano multiple times, has offered the rematch. So I would like to see that, just to see an actual fight. It was just kind of a fluke, and it's unfortunate to see. I'm really hoping, and I think at this point we can say that Kat Zingano is not seriously injured. And it was weird. I mean, but a win's a win on your record. I think she's going to try to appeal the loss, Kat is, but I don't know. I don't know what to think about it. It's interesting, and I personally would like to see a toe eye poke. That should be a thing in my book, because she didn't land a big devastating shot.
So according to the UFC rules, that's not technically a thing, but you think they should make it a thing, basically.
I mean, I think it makes sense, because it's not it's not that you got a big kick and debilitated the person in the traditional manner of getting a knockout or a knockdown or a submission or something, but it's just it literally is an eye poke. It's just since it's your toe, they don't count it as an eye poke. It's I don't know. I mean, it doesn't seem it doesn't.
I guess it's harder to intentionally poke someone with your toe.
You can't do it, and it doesn't seem to me like it should be classified as a KO. You know what I mean? If anything, it should be a doctor's stoppage or a technical stoppage or something. I don't know. It just to me, it doesn't hold the same weight as getting a TKO. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just a fluke.
So an interesting fluke fight on the card there. The next one we want to talk about is Andrei Arlovski and Walt Harris, with Walt Harris getting the decision in 3 rounds. Good result for Walt, but how would you break this one down?
It was an interesting fight. It was I thought Walt Harris definitely won the fight, and one judge disagreed. One judge scored it for Andrei Arlovski, which I didn't really see. I thought that Walt Harris controlled it for most of the fight, and I thought that I thought he won. And I thought it was really weird that one of the judges gave it to Arlovski. I thought it was pretty obvious who won the fight, and so that's just a weird bit of controversy. I mean, the right guy still won, but it just shows it's another example of just how terrible and fickle the judging can be, depending on who the judges are, And so it's just indicative of a larger problem that exists in the sport. But it's a good win for Walt Harris. It's a big name to have on your resume, and I think it's definitely an indication of not only where Walt Harris stands in the division. I mean, beating a guy like that just propels you a little further up. He's a big name, even if he's not towards the top of the division, because he's getting up there in age. But it's also indicative of where Andrei Arlovski is. He's definitely on his way out. He's losing to up-and-coming young guys that a few years ago he would have beaten handily, and I would I think we're going to see Andrei Arlovski in a couple more tops and call it a career, and I think we're going to see Walt Harris get some bigger name fights coming up pretty soon, and they're going to test him out at the top of the division and see if he can stand.
Okay, moving on to the main card. First we have Chad Mendes and Alexander Volkanovski, with Volkanovski winning this one in the 2nd round. What's your take?
So I didn't expect it to go this way. I didn't know much about Volkanovski, but Chad Mendes is a great fighter. He's fought for the title multiple times. He lost to Jose Aldo twice, and this is another one kind of similar to the last one, where we see a guy who's a vet, a big name in the division in Chad Mendes, and a young up and comer taking out one of the bigger names and making a name for himself in the division. And I think that Volkanovski looked great in this fight, and I think that he's now probably one fight away from a title shot, maybe 2 tops. And I think Mendes said he actually might retire. I don't think he announced that on fight night to any of the media in the arena, but I think he said on social media somewhere that he's thinking about retiring after this fight. So sad to see him go. He was a phenomenal fighter to watch, especially after 2 years out for a drug test, and then coming back and having 2 fights, and then he's done is unfortunate. But he's got a lot going on in the rest of his life. He runs a hunting expedition company and a couple other things, but good to see him go healthy and relatively young, whereas a lot of people stay too long and take more damage than they need to. But again, a great win for Alexander Volkanovski. It's going to put him towards the top of the division. He's been doing the media rounds and kind of talking out to the guys towards the top, and I think we're going to see him get a top 5 opponent next and be in a title shot after that.
Okay, moving on. Light heavyweight bout. Latifi against Anderson, and Anderson got the decision in round 3.
This is kind of a fight that is kind of sussing out the picture in the middle of the light heavyweight, kind of top 10, top 15. They're guys who are going to beat your entry level fighters, but they haven't historically been able to kind of put themselves over the top against the top of the division, and so this is just 2 guys at about the same level, different fighting styles, and Corey Anderson was able to pull out the win here, and I think that next we're going to see him get somebody towards the top of the division. He's not in the title picture quite yet, and I don't think he fares very well against your Gustafsson or your Cormier or your Jon Jones. I don't think he's really got much of a chance against any of them, but they'll give him another fight a little higher ranked, and if he beats that guy, they'll give him top 5, and he could be seeing a title shot in the next year if he puts on 2 impressive performances. But I don't think it's very well advised to throw him in there with a Jon Jones. We'll see what happens.
Moving on, one of your favorites, Carlos Condit, unfortunately losing this one to Michael Chiesa, round 2 by a submission.
Yes, this fight's kind of a double-edged blade, right? One of my favorite fighters of all time, Carlos Condit, unfortunately continues his losing streak. But it's interesting to see Michael Chiesa come up into this weight class and put a stamp on it on his entrance. You know, he's the guy who was towards the top of the division in lightweight, and he's just a bigger dude for the division and couldn't make the weight cut anymore easily and feel good in his fights. And so I was interested to see how he was going to handle the new division, because when you have to drain your body less, a lot of times you're quicker, you're more aware, you're just perform better on fight night. And so that's what we saw with Michael Chiesa. He looked great, he looked quick, and he was able to get I think it was a one-arm arm lock or a one-arm guillotine, and just an impressive submission win over a guy who has a great ground game and is super well-rounded in Carlos Condit. And I mean, there's not many better ways to make an entrance to a new division than to beat a former interim champ. And Michael Chiesa looks great. I'm real interested to see what he's going to do with his time in this division. I think he'll probably be ranked. He's probably ranked in the top 10 right now for sure. And there's a lot of interesting matchups for him. I think he needs to improve his striking game a little bit, but you know, maybe with depleting his body, he'll be not depleting his body as much. He'll be a little quicker and a little smoother on his feet and able to transition into his takedown game, which is his grappling's phenomenal. So I think he's got a bright future in the division, and we'll see where he goes from here. But I gotta say, I'm sad to see Carlos Condit at this point. He's just not beating those top level guys anymore, and he's still a super entertaining fighter. And I don't think he needs to retire. He hasn't been taking a ton of damage or anything, but just sad to see him at this point in his career. You know, it's a pretty far fall from grace at this point.
And then moving on, now we're starting to get into these, I guess you would call them co-main events, right?
Yeah, co-main event and the first title fight of the night.
Yeah, the first title fight was women's featherweight title bout between Amanda Nunes and Cris Cyborg, and Amanda Nunes picked it up in the first round.
Yes, this was crazy. So it was a champ versus champ. We had the bantamweight champ Amanda Nunes coming up to face Cris Cyborg for the featherweight title, and like I said before in the preview video, this is a fight that kind of determined the greatest women's fighter of all time, and Amanda Nunes made her point very emphatically and very quickly. Cyborg came in and was high pressure and heavy shots, and landed a bit on Nunes, but Nunes wasn't phased and was able to keep her footing and keep her head, and Cyborg kept moving forward, and Amanda Nunes was able to pick her shots and place them with power and accuracy and great timing, and was able to knock Cyborg out in less than a minute, which is just crazy. Cyborg has just been a terrifying, indomitable force in MMA throughout her entire career. She's just been just steamrolling people. And she came in here and tried to do the same thing to Amanda Nunes, tried to be the bully, tried to put the pressure on and just overwhelm Amanda Nunes, and Nunes was just having none of it. Nunes just stayed composed, stayed in the pocket, and just picked her shots well, threw them right down the pipe, caught Cyborg right on the chin multiple times, and was able to become the first ever two-weight women's champion, and without a doubt the greatest women's fighter of all time. I mean, she has Cyborg and Ronda Rousey on her resume, as well as Miesha Tate. She's put away, not put away, but beat Valentina Shevchenko, the current 125 champ. So I mean, you look at her resume, and you look at how she has beaten the best women's fighters in her time and in multiple weight classes, and you have to say that Nunes is the most impressive, most accomplished women's fighter of all time. It's without question.
Well, yeah, I mean, we might be having a different discussion here if this is one of those things that went to a decision, because when it goes to a decision, you can always have one fighter trying to claim another side of the story there, that maybe they were done dirty, but when you get knocked out, there's really no talking at that point.
Yeah, if it's a decision, there's always, was it judge's bias or whatever, especially if it's a close fight, but when you get a knockout in less than a minute, there's zero question. It is just sealing the envelope, stamping it with a wax stamp from olden times, and mailing it to wherever the hell it's going by way of carrier pigeon. there's no question about who won that fight, and Amanda Nunes just looked phenomenal and put on the biggest performance of her career by far, and joined the ranks of the champs, as Conor McGregor would say. You know, she's one of, I don't know, 6 people now. It seems like they're just popping up every couple months now.
So then, finally, the main event of Jon Jones and Alexander Gustafsson. So Gustafsson lasted 3 rounds before losing this one to Jon Jones. And I mean, how would you break down the fight? And what do you have to say about it?
I think it was Jon Jones figured out Gustafsson in the 3rd or 4th round of their last fight and carried that into this fight. He just knew what to do. He made better use of. He was better at range for sure. Like I thought he would do, he went in there and went for an early takedown and tried to force a takedown that he didn't really need to. Didn't get it, but he. I think that's also part of his strategy. You know, is to have some success striking at range, have some success striking at both long range and short range, and then make sure that he constantly had the threat of the takedown to keep Gustafsson off his game. Jon Jones also threw a lot more leg kicks, and we saw him utilize them very well and take away a lot of the movement and power of Gustafsson pretty quickly. Gustafsson didn't look quite as light on his feet as he could have and has in recent times, and I mean, Jon just won the whole fight. There's no way about it. He just dominated the fight, and he got the TKO in the 3rd round, and I don't know. It was much more one-sided than I thought it was going to be, for sure. I thought we were going to see Gustafsson have at least some sort of success like he did in the first fight at range, but that wasn't the case. Jon Jones just wasn't. Just shut Gustafsson down the whole time. And even Gustafsson said that in the post-fight interviews. He's saying that basically the whole fight he just couldn't find his timing. He couldn't find his rhythm because Jon was just upsetting everything he was trying to do so well. And it was a great performance, and it's good to see Jon Jones back in that win column, especially against such a high-quality opponent with such an impressive performance. Coming back from a lot of controversy and everything, it's good to see him get off to the right start, you know.
But are there still questions about like his drug use, or how does that like factor into this?
For sure there are still questions about his drug use, and he will still continue to get tested in the offseason and in his next camp. He's already been scheduled to fight against Anthony Smith, I think, at UFC 236 or something like that, which is an interesting fight, and it's an interesting test. I'm sure we'll do a video about that when the time comes, but he will definitely continue to get tested, and if he fails another drug test, then I don't see any possible way to redeem that at that point. You know, it's a lot already. He's failed more drug tests than most people on the roster.
So what is the protocol for if you fail a drug test and you're the champion? I mean, you get the title vacated, or like what happens?
So he would be stripped of the title, I would assume. If your champion isn't keeping up his champion duties, which include staying clean and making the weight and all this stuff, then they get stripped. I mean, we've seen champions stripped for missing their weight limit in championship fights. So he would have to be stripped if he fails another drug test. There's no way. I mean, I think that's what happened before too. That's how Daniel Cormier got the undisputed titles. They stripped Jon Jones after a bunch of controversy happened, and yeah, we'll see going forward. I hope he stays clean and just continues to have a great career, and I hope he fully embraces being the heel that he is. You know, he's personality-wise kind of shifted his public persona recently, which I think is good for him. He doesn't have to pretend to be somebody he's not. So I think he should just embrace the heel, be kind of a dick for the rest of his career, and continue dominating people, and then go up a weight class and do the same thing at heavyweight. I think it'd be great. But if he fails another drug test, for me it's game over. Like, for me, it's what are you doing? Like.
So the last thing I'm going to ask you about Jon Jones is, let's assume that he does stay clean from this point forward. How much longer do you think he holds that light heavyweight title? Like, how many times do you think he's going to be able to defend it before he calls it quits?
As many as he wants.
So you don't think anyone can take him?
No one that's currently in the division. Not that I see. I mean, the one thing that I am excited for is that Luke Rockhold, the former middleweight champion, is going up a weight class. He's a huge middleweight, and he's sick of making that weight cut, so he's going up to 205, and he's been talking shit to Jon Jones, which is super exciting. He's also Daniel Cormier's teammate and training partner, one of them. And so, actually, out of all the people who could possibly challenge Jon Jones in the light heavyweight division, the one that I see being the most interesting is Luke Rockhold. He's a huge guy. He has a big reach. He has a very interesting, long striking game. He throws a lot of really powerful kicks. He's good boxing, and his takedown defense, his takedowns, his top control, and his grappling are phenomenal. He trains with Daniel Cormier, who's an Olympian wrestler. He trains with Cain Velasquez. He trains out of AKA with Javier Mendes, so his striking game and his overall game are on point. And I think that barring Luke Rockhold coming up and challenging for a title, there's nobody that I really see as a real threat. And so I think that Jon Jones will defend that light heavyweight title as many times as he feels like it until he gets sick of cutting weight and goes up to heavyweight, and then very possibly does the same thing there. And then either one of two things happens. Either he retires on top, or Father Time, who has never lost a fight ever, eventually beats Jon Jones. That's all I see happening. Retirement and old age are going to beat Jon Jones. Or Jon Jones himself. By fucking up.
Well, there you have it. Your recap of the pay-per-view. We hope you enjoyed it. Whether you're watching on thisislitTube.com or YouTube, make sure to stay tuned, subscribe, like the video. We got more content coming for you. Where they're fighting.
Where were they?
Or do we not even
Forum
need to say that?
in LA.
You know, fuck it. We're just gonna say UFC 2.
They moved the whole the whole card because you could have passed the drug test.
Yeah.
Alex.
Mm-hmm.
Are we ready to start this up?
Oh, you guys are ready.
He asked you.